that at one moment they were in chambers with his friend. Now they bring a man, he's called Dungu. Dungu was charged with a simple case again of theft by the notorious Akyekokola of the public safety unit in Nakuru. So when he comes in the door, they realized he was going to be released. So Akyekokola and his team decided to withdraw the case. So when they withdrew the case, Dungu, who was in the dock, pleaded with the magistrate, please remand me, I'm going to be killed. But now, Njuba and his friend, his colleague, realized they had no ground to remand him because the charges had been withdrawn. So they decided to tell him, please, you have been discharged. He said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Please remand me. They found him themselves that very cabinet and said, how do we handle this? So they conferred and said, now, let's leave this man. So when they went to the chambers to find a solution, the man came down to them in the chambers. Meanwhile, those vicious men were already in the courtroom, running after the man. So what they did in Juba and in Bazinga, they opened the window of Uganda Road. The same building, it has not changed. They opened the window and told the man, run to flee. That is judicial activism. The man ran, they followed him up, blah, blah, blah. The lawyer Sebunya was arrested and taken to Nakuru. So as these people ran after the man, as fate would have it, they finally got him, loaded him onto the truck. As they were about to reach Nakuru, they shot him dead. Several bullets shot him dead. But good enough, Sebunya, his lawyer, had been taken in at Nakuru and was watching each and everything. So he's the one who testified in the case of Kasim Obura. And Kasim Obura was convicted, executed. But before his execution, he talked about Njuba's arrest during the UNLF. Njuba found himself in the same cell with Kasim Obura, but Kasim Obura was executed. Now, why am I bringing this story which was told to us by Njuba in this book? You can see the magistrates, Njuba, Mazira and others, fighting to rescue victims of injustice, doing everything possible to ensure that they save lives. That is judicial activism. Now I'm wondering, my Lord, I'm sorry to raise this one thing that has baffled me. Through judicial activism, there are quite a lot of innovations that we have made in our jurisprudence, like a mandatory, you heard of mandatory injunction, something which was alien. How can an injunction be mandatory? We have things like statutory interdicts, we have things like amendment of the constitution by infection. All those innovative doctrines have come or have found their way into our jurisprudence. But there is one which was quite innovative by Justice Ogola, interim bail. Very, very interesting. We could read into the law, there was nothing like interim bail. But out of his ingenuity, he came up with that doctrine and granted Dr. Kizanesi bail. That was judicial activism. Now all of a sudden, 20 years down later, because initially that was 2006 when they got interim bail. 20 years down the road, we are reversing those bails. Basically, who got interim bail in 2006 cannot get mandatory bail, which is fundamentally provided for in the Constitution. After spending 180 days on remand, he cannot get mandatory bail. He was admitted to interim bail in 2006 on the same charges, treason, terrorism. 20 years down the road, he cannot get mandatory bail. What has gone wrong? So what we have today, as I conclude, we do not have judicial activism, but we have judicial tyranny. And that's what Semakade was talking about in his address. We must deal with the judicial tyranny. Semakade is in exile because of judicial tyranny. And many people have faced the wrath of it. There are ramifications everywhere, in and out. We need to deal with this. The very last aspect of Njuba's activism was when he was a minister for Justice and Constitution, sitting minister. Njuba shocked all of us. He was sitting minister. You are superintending of a constitution-making process. Justice Odoki makes a report which was going to inform the debate in the Constituent Assembly. when people came out and stunned the nation and said that document was doctored. There is a satanic clause in that document. Satanic clause. Which one? They had smuggled in a clause about National Council of State, which was alien. You were saying, I will not own up this. The document of collective responsibility. I'm sorry to call him. This is my classmate. We used to call him KK. I'm sorry. So KK, the doctrine of collective responsibility was defied by him, but that was defiance. That was activism. Some of you need to do it. I have heard occasionally Kahiro Tafile here defying collective responsibility, but we need to get more of that in Juba. The last one, I have another message, not this from this book, so I've taken a lot of time, but 1 more minute, I call it a day. This one is equally instructive. My brother, Philip Bahia, talked about Jolly Joe Chiwanuka. This is a message to you that's happening. It's not for me. It is now, this time around, it is Vincent Sekono. It has a message for you there. Vincent Sekono, my life and my work in Uganda and beyond. Vincent Sekono was the secretary of the the chairman of the EC by then, Chichira. This one was the secretary of the commission led by Chichira. This book is very recent, 2005. He writes about George Akyekokola. Actually, his true name is Joseph Alibechi. A journalist, football enthusiast, and a politician. Just a small excerpt here, since we are reminiscing on the life of the activist. On the 19th of December 1969, there was an assassination attempt on President Obote's life when he was closing a UPC delegates conference at Lukwago Stadium. I have already read. Thereafter, several opposition politicians were arrested, including Jolly Joe and Abu Mayanja. As Jolly Joe battled to clear his name while in detention, Express Football Club descended into disarray. In 1971, after spending almost 2 years in jail, the new president, Idi Amin, released Jolly Joe along with other political prisoners. When Amin banned political parties, Jolly Joe dedicated more time to Express Football Club. However, when political figures started disappearing and some other people being murdered at an alarming scale, Jolly Joe realized his life was under threat. He therefore relocated to Nairobi, Kenya, but in December 1973, Jolly Joe and some other colleagues were kidnapped from Kenya, returned to Uganda, and sadly murdered. At that time, Jolly Joe Kiwanuka was 58 years of age. I knew his son, Jimmy Mugambe Kiwanuka, because we were contemporaries in life, although we went to different schools. We caught up in life when we started working. Jimmy Mugambe Kiwanuka is a father to the current Attorney General, Chiliowa Kiwanuka. Your grand Jolly Joe was kidnapped from Nairobi, brought back here illegally and killed. That brings back the recent events of Dr. Besigye being kidnapped from Nairobi, and I don't want him to be murdered. I thank you, may God bless you. He was a brute. I mean, he was a dictator. I mean, he was a murderer. But the Attorney General that time stood up and said, no, one of our own, who must be released? Mr. Attorney General. The Honorable Swami said we were orphans. Yesterday we had a General Assembly. The President addressed us almost with tears coming out of his eye. He showed us his baby, who is less than 1 year old. The baby is also in exile. We are in a quagmire right now. We can't hold elections because of multiple litigations and whatnot. We are in a total mess as the legal profession, as the bar. At one time there was even an attempted coup by one Munaba, the Secretary General. And I'm surprised when you get the Secretary, you read about Njuba, he was Secretary of Uganda Law Society, he was defending his lawyers. He was not overthrowing his colleagues who were leading the bar. But we have a Munaba who stands the gun against the president of Uganda Law Society, who has a boot on his head. So we want to see the role of the Attorney General. I want to see the Honorable Attorney General playing the role of Godfrey Ray of the Idi Amin days in releasing Aiguhugu, and you are causing the return of our president. So that we now, the second last is about judicial activism. In Juba, they have mentioned here the Honorable Kiki when he served as Chief Magistrate. Juba was approached by Idi Amin because there was a vacuum after the expulsion of the Asians. He writes in this book, many of the magistrates were Indians of Ugandans of Indian origin. So when they were expelled, there was a vacuum. So they approached many lawyers to serve on temporary contract. That's how he served on a 6-month contract. Many of them accepted. So in Juba, even when he served as a magistrate, he remained an activist. He espoused and actually executed judicial activism. There are so many instances, I don't have time to count. Read the book. People buy the book. If you can't buy the one of 100,000, at least the one of 50,000. Get this book.